What is up, people, and thank you so much for checking out this edition of the Uncommitted Episode 2, a new generation recruiting podcast. I'm your host, EJ Stewart. I'm joined by Kendall. We got a great show for you guys. We got a lot to talk about regarding some transfers, regarding some recruits and some of their decision making moving forward amidst this kind of national unrest that we have. And we got a major coaching resignation that should have a lot of ripple effects on the recruiting world. So we got a lot to talk about. Joining me is my co-host, Kendall Stewart. Kendall, what's up, homie?
Yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of interesting stories have kind of arisen over the last couple of weeks, not only on the recruiting front, but just in society in general, obviously. We've had a massive shift societally, and that's going to we've seen kind of a trickle-down effect into college basketball recruiting, ironically enough. Not something that you necessarily expect, but we'll talk about that at the top. But we're also talk about, we've seen multiple players leave, the NBA draft, pull out of the NBA draft, but then also subsequently enter the transfer portal. So that seems to be a new trend in college basketball. We'll talk about that. And like you said, massive coaching change that should affect the college basketball recruiting landscape tremendously. So we'll discuss that as well.
And amidst this, these trying times, I want to give a massive condolences to the families of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. If you haven't heard our other podcast, we talked a little bit about those tragedies and what's kind of happened since. I want to give a massive shout out to all the protesters out there who are fighting for that much needed change in our society. And I think it's important that people who watch our channel, listen to our podcast, know where we stand. We stand for justice. We stand for the fight against racism and oppression. And we're riding with these protesters trying to get change. So shout out to them. And I think brings us to our top story for today. And it regards the 15-year-old phenom Mikey Williams, who I think surprised some people when he put out his tweet initially saying that he was going to be thinking about going to an HBCU for his college. Right now, he's a class of 2023 high school player. He's probably the best player in that class by most accounts, or at least one of the top 2 or 3 players in that class. And he says that an HBCU will indeed be on his final list of schools. And I gotta say, Kendall, I think his Instagram post, there were a lot of things that he said that I thought rang true, and I was happy that he said it. Number one, he said he's been thinking about this for years, which tells you a lot about kind of where he is as a kid and as a person, considering that a 15-year-old was already thinking about how his decision on which schools he goes to and whether that be an HBCU, how that could have lasting effects on black people in the black community and college basketball as a whole. He said, quote, "What a lot of coaches don't understand is that we don't need them." 100% true. Can't see anyone who could deny that. Also, he says, "We are the reason that these schools have such big names and such good history, but in the end, what do we get out of it? What a lot of top-level athletes don't understand is if you're a pro, then you're a pro. No matter what college you go to, even if you don't go to college, if you're a killer, you're going to kill anywhere." He then also adds, "I'm riding for my people. I'm 10 toes down behind the black community. Any way I can help or make a change in the black community, best believe I'm going to do that." And he ends it again by saying that HBCUs will be part of his final list of schools. So just an all-around really thoughtful post. I gotta give him a round of applause on that, because that was awesome. So that's Mikey Williams and his what he's thinking about right now. Kendall, what do you make of it?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, tremendous post on Instagram. In terms of just being socially conscious and very thoughtful for a guy as young as he is to put out a post like that. Was very impressive. But this idea, the whole idea of your one and done 5-star type of player, considering going to an HBCU honestly was first broached last recruiting cycle with Josh Christopher, another Southern California kid, who decided to take an official visit to Howard Howard University out in Washington, D.C., and that kind of shook up the recruiting landscape quite a bit. Christopher, gained a lot of good publicity from that visit, and really opened a lot of people's eyes to this being a possibility. Not only Josh Christopher, but Makir Maker, which I don't know what the deal with Makir Maker, because he still hasn't said what he's going to do. I don't expect him to play college basketball, but we don't know. But another kid who also took a visit to Howard. So yeah, no, I mean this is something we talked about when Josh Christopher took a visit to Howard, and now Mikey Williams is kind of opening people's eyes to this being even more of a possibility. And look, I mean, I totally agree with the notion that if someone like Josh Christopher would have went to Howard, or if someone like Mikey Williams, or someone like Jalen Green, or Cade Cunningham, or any of the top 2, 3, top 10 players in the country went to an HBCU, they'd still be a lottery pick. They'd still be a top 10 pick. It wouldn't affect them that much. Honestly, they probably look better because the competition is not going to be as tough. So while there would be question marks about who they're playing against, statistically they would be outrageous. So in that regard, like, I 100% feel like, yeah, you could make this move and you'd be fine. It's no different than guys, deciding I'm going to go to a smaller school, or a guy saying I'm just not going to, I'm going to go to the G League, or I'm going to go overseas. Like, it's a different route. It's not conventional, but at the end of the day, the top guys tend to be the top guys anyway. So, I mean, do I think Mikey Williams has a point on that regard? 100%. Do I expect a lot of people said, look, is Mikey Williams going to play college basketball? By the time we get to 2023, will that rule be changed? For a while, it looked like there was no chance, that, of course, he was going to go straight to the pros. But there's been a lot of recent momentum over the last couple of months that one-and-done rule may not be gone anytime soon. So if that's the case, and a guy like Imani Bates has to go to college or the G League, or Mikey Williams has to go to college or the G League, like we've talked about the G League quite a bit, and we don't know if it's for everybody. And so he may have to play college basketball, and if he wants to go to HBCU, I think it's certainly an option. I wouldn't expect it, personally. I mean, he's gotten 10-plus offers from HBCUs over the last week, so certainly they think that it's a possibility. I don't blame them for trying, and a lot of HBCU alums have put out their pitches on social media about why you should go to Norfolk State over, Texas Southern, or why you should go to Alabama State. Mo Williams just became the coach at Alabama State. Shout out to Mo Williams over, Alcorn State. Personally, I think Howard certainly has already shown that they had the infrastructure to potentially go out and recruit someone like Josh Christopher. And NC Central, with Lavelle Moten, who's very outspoken this week about college basketball coaches having to step up, is another guy who he's been recruiting Bronny already. Before all this, he's recruiting Bronny, he's recruiting Zaire Wade. So those are two schools that I think would be equipped to maybe recruit a guy like Mikey Williams, but it may not even have to be a Mikey Williams. I think we'll see more of an impact because someone like Mikey Williams said this. You may get a 4-star that says, maybe I can't go to Duke or Kentucky, but why go to Georgia Tech when I can go to, like I said, Alcorn State, or I can go to Prairie View. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. I don't know if it'll happen at the highest levels of college basketball,
right,
in terms of recruiting, but this will have an impact.
Yeah, I think it definitely will. But I still feel like for it to really, well, first of all, I know you're saying you're not sure what the end result will be. I am kind of worried for Mikey, only because I feel like if he decides to then go to Kentucky or whatever, I think there will be, we're in a society where we always want to try to point out any kind of hypocrisy or any kind of, flip-flopping. Like, it's just the way we are. Right. Everybody wants to call everybody a hypocrite. So I think if he doesn't,
and we have archives now of everyone's opinion. So.
Right. So I think that some people will feel like, if he doesn't, there are going to be people who are going to take that opportunity and say, oh, remember when you were talking about HBCUs in the black community? And that's unfortunate because the kid's 15. Like, I think he absolutely deserves the right to change his mind. I think the fact that he's even thinking in this manner at this point in his life is impressive, as I've said already. So that concerns me a little bit. I do feel like, does it change the landscape that he's considering it? It does a little bit, but I think that for this to have a dramatic change, I think it's going to take kind of a class, I don't want to say similar, because like what we saw at Duke with Zion and Cam and RJ was unprecedented pretty much, but I think it's going to take a class like that. It's going to take 2 or 3 kids teaming up and saying, yo, we're going to Norfolk State this season, or yo, we're going to Howard this season. Like, I think if we get that kind of grouping, and again, it doesn't have to be the top 3 of the top 4 players in the class like at Duke had, but if you can get 3 of the top 20, 3 of the top 25, and it become, because I think the problem I see, and the reason why I feel like you and maybe myself are also skeptical whether or not this will pull through, is just the idea that the schools, like the talent level at these schools is just so low, and the funding and the money that goes into these schools is just so low that it's like, while yes, Mikey's 100% right, he can go to Howard and he would destroy everybody in the MEAC, and he'd probably, in the one NCAA tournament game they play, he'll probably have 30. And okay, yeah, exactly. And they lose in the first round, probably, maybe they win a round, but he would still be a top pick. But I think the problem would be, what would have happened and how much more could he have gained had he been with better talent. I think to kind of mitigate that concern and the idea that we don't have the money and the funds to kind of support these elite athletes, if you get a bunch of kids to go to one school, well, now whoever sponsors that school, Nike, Adidas, they could say, oh, well, let's shift some of these funds that we've been giving to NC State and we've been getting nothing out of it. Let's shift that money maybe to Howard now,
Yeah.
And then maybe that helps. Maybe not in that 1 year in terms of the facilities and stuff. Maybe the next season, Howard then has the facilities and the infrastructure to go after more recruits. I think the problem we have right now is we're waiting for one savior, and like I don't I envy that position for Mikey, or I not envy it, but rather I don't envy it. If that becomes kind of his thing. But if he decides, yo, I don't care, I'm going by myself. I'm just gonna play with whoever's on the squad. I'm gonna average 30. I'm gonna be no one picking the draft, man. He's a legend. If he does it, he's an absolute legend. If he does it, he's an absolute legend. So I would be all for it. I'm just saying, I think that I think it may feel more like a one-off because we won't see any of the massive success in regards to wins and stuff. We're seeing Ben Simmons go to LSU and struggle mightily. Not struggle in terms of individuals, but like his team don't go to the tournament. Things like that. So.
Again, I think John Morant at Murray State is the closest thing we could get to that one and done type guy, or that top 5 pick playing at that small of a level. And the Ohio Valley isn't cupcakes, but it's very much a mid-major conference. And if you put, like, for example, if Josh Christopher was playing in the MEAC at Howard, he'd average 25 points a game easily. And I won't say easy, but he would average 20 points a game, probably 25. And like, I think Howard would be the best team in the MEAC. Maybe I'm underrating the competition, but I do feel like, again, I think your point about the facilities is a real thing. These schools are massively underfunded, which is a problem. And look, I think some of it has to do with, the schools don't have, the eyeballs, whether it be TV contracts, whether it be talent, and if the talent comes, the TV will come, if the TV contracts come, then the Nike money will come. And it all starts with the talent base. So that's where I do think that this is an important thing to talk about. And I think it's a possibility of really causing a major shift, but I don't think any one player would be negatively that affected from it. I think someone like Mikey Williams would be fine if they went to that school, but it's also tough for me to tell Mikey Williams to do that because, like I said, now you're telling him to go to a school that's not going to have some of the actual resources, or it's not going to have, the best facilities,
even like travel, even something like traveling, from school to school. You're not flying on jets or planes and things like that.
Yeah.
You're riding the bus.
It's tough to tell you to go to what right now is financially a mid-major program.
It's not even mid-major.
It's low.
Yeah, right.
In terms of funding, and instead of going to a school like Kentucky where you're treated like an NBA player. So that's the issue, which is why someone like Josh Christopher, that's the one thing I will say about the backlash is that luckily Josh Christopher, I'll say luckily, but Josh Christopher didn't get much of the backlash because also, part of it is I think Josh Christopher wasn't too aggressive with, I'm going to an HBCU. He just said, look, they're on my list. I'm going to take a visit. I think nobody really thought he was going to Howard. A kid from California, that's, again, always been a West Coast kid. He probably wasn't going to go to California, but wasn't going to go to Howard. But, he didn't really get much backlash for it. Mikey Williams is going a little aggressive in terms of his stance on keeping them on his list. So I just hope he keeps them on his list. He didn't say he's going to an HBCU, so I hope people understand that. But, I know that, schools like Memphis are trying to get involved. I know schools like Kansas are trying to get involved. So he's going to be recruited by the best schools in the country. So it'll be interesting to see. And the G League will also be involved. So this will be an interesting thing to follow.
Yeah, shout out to Mikey Williams, man. Awesome post. Good luck in his recruitment. And, man, again, if he does it, he's a legend. And
also, really, we haven't talked about him on this show, but he's a great player.
Yeah. That's why it will be so big, because this kid, he's truly an elite prospect, truly a phenom.
Take basketball tomorrow and be fine,
right? Exactly. So that's why this is such a big deal. So shout out to Mikey. I want to talk about Oklahoma State. They were hit with a 1-year postseason ban after one of his former assistant coaches was sentenced to 3 months in prison for accepting bribes to send certain OK State and originally South Carolina players to financial advisors. The Cowboys were one of the teams to watch this year because, of course, they have consensus top 3, potentially for a lot of people, the number 1 player in the class of 2020, Cade Cunningham, joined the squad this year. The NCAA says currently any current or incoming players, recruits, that can apply for a standard waiver to be granted a release from those commitments. So, Kendall, how does this play out with Mr. Cunningham?
Yeah, the Cade Cunningham situation is very fluid right now. First of all, look, do I think Oklahoma State got a raw deal? Look, they got the hammer. I'm not gonna say they got a raw deal because there has to be some semblance of punishment in college basketball for this FBI thing and all the scandal around that. And the Oklahoma State punishment now then certainly sends a ripple effect and shockwaves throughout programs like Kansas and LSU and Arizona. We're going to be watching those very closely because if those programs don't get hit as hard as Oklahoma State, they will be, I would imagine, Louisville as well. But if they're not, or if they're not even hit harder than Oklahoma State, who had kind of a minor thing compared to some of these other schools, then it'll be more hypocrisy from the NCAA. But when it comes to Cade Cunningham, the streets are very quiet right now in regards to Cade Cunningham, EJ. Yeah. And, what I mean by that is doesn't seem like anybody knows what he's going to do. Typically when there's this much skepticism or this much kind of intrigue about what a guy is going to do, there's always somebody that claims to know them or somebody that claims to have a source that says this guy's doing this team's already angling to get involved, or this, the G League's trying to get involved. There's nothing. We know nothing right now about Cade Cunningham, and that's fascinating. I think that shows you that this caught so many people by surprise. Typically, when a guy like, for example, we'll talk about Mac McClung later in the show, when he decommitted, or there was people when he was in the draft that knew, he's gonna transfer.
Right.
Like that had already been out, and then when he announced it, it was kind of old news at that point. Because the wheels were already in motion behind the scenes. There were no wheels in motion for a Cade Cunningham transfer or a Cade Cunningham decommitment. Cade Cunningham going to overseas, because it shocked everybody. So we're all following this in real time. Shout out to Mike Boynton, the coach of Oklahoma State, who probably is wrongfully being kind of, affected by this. It's nothing to do with the scandal. But when you look at Cade Cunningham, I mean, look, we're talking about a top 2 player in the country. Depending on who you like between him and Jalen Green, I think Cade Cunningham would have had a bigger impact in college basketball than Jalen Green, which we talked about in an earlier video. Although Jalen Green may have more upside. So I think you're talking about the best player in college basketball right now. I think is a free agent, which is crazy. And Gary Parrish from CBS Sports came out and said that if Cade Cunningham decommitted, that he expects Kentucky to be the clear front runner to get Cade Cunningham. And I understand that mindset, because when Cade Cunningham chose Oklahoma State, the other school that he was seriously considering seemed to be Kentucky.
Exactly.
So I understand that mindset. The only issue is that when Cade Cunningham committed, Kentucky hadn't. Right now, Kentucky's recruiting class has Devin Askew at the point guard, along with B.J. Boston and Terrence Clark at the 2 guard, at the wings. So those are 3 5-star players. And at the time, Devin Askew wasn't committed. It was kind of, whichever one of you guys wants to be the point guard, you guys have to commit first. And now that Devin Askew's there, I mean, look, if I'm Cal Parry, I'd rather have Cade Cunningham, of course. But it's kind of late to do that. Do you take Cade Cunningham and just tell all these guys to figure it out? I mean, I would, but
that's what he would do if that happens. Yeah. That's what he's going to do.
But the question is, does Cade Cunningham want to now go into a situation where he's not a selfish player at all. He's a very unselfish player, so he'd actually probably thrive in that situation. But now he's going to a situation where there's a lot of heads, mouths to feed. And he's going to be the point guard playing with another point guard. So it'd be awkward. But it's a very, very fluid situation, and apparently he doesn't seem interested in the G League. At least he wasn't initially.
Right.
There's some talk about him going overseas, but what do you think about the CJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts, man. This is obviously, I think I agree with your assessment that clearly this took a lot of people aback. Like, people weren't ready for this because, as you said, I've been waiting and seeing, okay, what's his next options, and there's very little out there about what comes next. I don't think. Yeah, because I don't think. Yeah, I agree. I think that's why, because I don't think he knows what's gonna happen. So, Oklahoma State is appealing, so perhaps they want to kind of see where the appeals process goes. We've seen in the past people appeal and then it maybe get something kind of diminished. I could see maybe an appeal happening and them maybe getting some scholarships taken away, but maybe not the postseason ban. One thing I will say is, man, if they got a postseason ban, then Arizona and Louisville are going to get clobbered, you would think.
Yeah, Kansas.
And Kansas. I mean, you would think you're talking about 2 to 3 years even probably from some of these other schools. So buckle up. This could get really intense for some of these other fan bases who support those schools and obviously for those schools. I don't know. I mean, to me, part of me looks at this and says, look, obviously playing in March Madness is a huge deal, not just for, the player's NBA prospect, but also for the possibility of marketing,
Yeah, brand exposure.
Brand exposure, absolutely. But I'll be honest, I think at this point in the game, if he really is committed to wanting to play at Oklahoma State, and you mentioned some of the issues at Kentucky, I mean, if there isn't a perfect fit anywhere else, I might just play the season. Because you're one and done anyway. Like, everybody knows you're one and done. Everybody knows you're not in this thing to kind of like, help build the program. Like, that's not this. You're finding a school so you can play 1 year, so you can show your few skills to the NBA scouts and recruits. Scouts and coaches and GMs. I mean, nothing has really changed other than that.
Who are the top one and done prospects in the 2020 draft?
Cole Anthony didn't make the tournament.
Anthony Edwards
team didn't make the tournament. James Wiseman's team didn't make tournament. He didn't even play to even get them. We don't know if they would have made tournament, but it was very unlikely they were going to make the tournament.
Yeah.
All these was skeptical. It was dicey. Let's put it that way. Dicey they were going to make the tournament.
LaMelo Ball.
Yeah, LaMelo Ball didn't play college basketball. Yeah, I mean, that seems to be very...
The bar has been set at this point that you don't have to play in the NCAA tournament to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, so I was saying, Ben Simmons didn't play I feel like he was kind of like the first guy where it was like, he didn't play in the NCAA tournament, and he kind of got killed for it, but it wasn't enough to not make him number 1 pick. He still went number 1 over a guy who went to Duke, who won 30 games.
His brand was helped by the fact that it wasn't helped, but like it became a huge thing. You had the superstar guy. This team wasn't even good enough to make the tournament.
You said Marco Fultz' team won 12 games.
Yeah, not even. So that's becoming a thing now. Now, if Cade Cunningham goes the route of Markel Fultz and his team, now I think Oklahoma State probably be pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So I don't think it would be like Markel Fultz. Part of the reason there was no fanfare was his team was so bad.
Yeah.
Like LSU was at least competitive, so those games were interesting when they played against Kentucky and other teams. Markel Fultz, we really didn't care even when they played against UCLA. It was like it's just a scouting game because we know who's going to win. Oklahoma State is competitive, so people would still care, but it's tough. It's tough to tell a guy you're not going to have any chance to play in the Big 12 tournament, or NCAA tournament. Like your team's playing for nothing. That's a tough thing to swallow. But look, his brother's an assistant coach, so
that's the thing. It's just everything just seems so well set up at Oklahoma State. This is a bad inconvenience, but like you mentioned, I don't know how. Look, anywhere he goes, he's a starting point guard. But again, Kentucky has a lot of guards, and he's going to be playing in a backcourt with Terrence Clark, who's also going to demand a lot of touches, a lot of attention. How does that work? I don't know.
It's not a great thing.
Unless you can show me another place that had a plan for him, has a spot for him where it makes sense for him to step in and be the point guard, and they can go to the tournament and be fine, I'll say, all right, then go for it. But if that situation doesn't really exist, and you're telling me Kentucky is the main place that would be the place he would go to if he left, I'm like, I would just stay. Like,
in terms of other schools that were recruiting him, Washington was on his final list. Florida was on his final list. He took official visits there. And, I mean, look, those schools certainly could use a player like Cade Cunningham.
Florida needs a guard, as we're going to talk about in a minute.
Also point guard. So, Florida certainly could use him. Washington certainly could use him. Memphis was on his final 10. They thought they were getting Jalen Green, so they didn't really push for Cade Cunningham that hard. Now that they don't have Jalen Green, maybe they push harder for Cade Cunningham if he's on the table.
And they just lost Tyler Harris too.
Yeah, they lost Tyler Harris. They went after Mac McClung, couldn't get him. Mm-hmm. Again, went after Jalen Green. They've been very aggressive in the transfer market. Haven't really hit on any guards per se. So, I mean, there are schools out there that are still kind of scrambling. But
I mean, all the schools you mentioned, though, none of those teams sound like automatic tournament teams.
No,
not one.
Which maybe that's appealing to him. He said in the past he doesn't really necessarily want to go to a blue blood, but
right. But I guess my point being that you can go to schools and still not play in the postseason.
Yeah, you still may not play the tournament. Yeah.
So my thing is, if you got your homie's the coach, what is it? His brother? His brother's the coach.
Brother's assistant.
Brother's the assistant. They've already set everything up for you. You know what the situation is going to be. I don't know if I'm at this late in the game during a pandemic, during all this stuff. I'm saying, all right, I'm gonna just go someplace else that really wasn't expecting me. My brother's not there. They stopped recruiting me. I haven't had contact with them in months. I don't know. I feel bad for him. I feel bad, obviously, for all the players at Oklahoma State. I feel bad for him, particularly because it's for this comes so late in the game. Yeah. I don't know. The NCAA teams will continually be okay with shooting its own self in the foot when it comes to some of this stuff.
We talked about
I don't understand it.
Topper on our show, and he mentioned that the NCAA continues to push the best players out of college basketball.
Yeah.
It happened to Memphis with Wiseman, and it happened to Memphis with Jalen Green.
Yeah.
But if Cade Cunningham decides, screw it, I'm going to the G League, which would be something I want to talk about. That would be really bad, I think, for a lot of parties. college basketball honestly would be the least affected if Jalen Green if Cade Cunningham goes to the G League. It would hurt, but I mean, like again, clearly they're not worried about that for whatever reason. But honestly, I think the NBA, it would not be good for the NBA. It'd be good for the G League and like their whole thing that they have some super team with Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green on there.
Yeah.
But for the NBA teams that are trying to scout, if Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green were both on this G League team, I wouldn't know what to think. It'd be an all-star team with guys just playing. I mean, Cade Cunningham can kind of play with anybody, but how am I supposed to scout these two guys against each other when they're on the same team playing in exhibition games? Like, at least Zion and Barrett and Reddish were playing legitimate basketball games where, it was like, all right, the cream really rises to the top, and we figured out the cream was Zion Williamson. Maybe that's the case if Cade Cunningham goes to the G League, but that would just be an awkward fit for everybody. I think it'd be awkward for Jalen Green. It'd be awkward for Cade Cunningham. Dacian Nix, who's a point guard now. What? I'm signing up to be a backup.
I think eventually they got to find a way to get. They can't do the exhibition thing forever. I think they got to find a way to make it a legit team or have them. Yeah. Like what I was thinking was maybe have them in. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're running late, but I want to maybe have them like they're doing these. We're talking about these in-season tournaments in the NBA. I don't know if they've started it. I don't think they've started them yet in G League. But what I would do is I'd have them competing in those kind of tournaments,
right?
Games that do matter, and games that do mean something. So that the other players that they're going against, I know that they're taking it as seriously as those kids should be taking it. So I always felt like the exhibition games was kind of like the weakest part of the G League program in terms of like evaluation and interest. But there are ways to fix it. That's one of the ways I have. But
so what do you think Cade Cunningham is going to do real quick?
I think he will stay. I think what will happen is I think that they will appeal, and I think they will get that ban off. I think there are enough parties interested in making sure that this doesn't continue.
The ghost of T. Boone Pickens would be very happy about that. But shout out T. Pickens.
That's my take. You think he's going to leave though? You think he's definitely going to leave?
I think he's going to transfer, yes, or get a release.
All right, well, we'll see how that shakes out. Let's go through these transfers real quick. So, obviously, you mentioned Mac McClung. He announced he will be joining Texas Tech. He turned down offers from Memphis, Auburn, Wake Forest, USC, BYU. As you said before, his decision initially came after entering the NBA draft and then withdrawing from the draft. As rules constantly state, he would still have to sit out a year, but you guys know how that goes in terms of people getting waivers to play immediately. So I'll leave it at that. Kendall, big deal, little deal, or no deal that Mac McClung is now a Red Raider?
I think it's a little deal. I think it's certainly. I think he's gonna get a waiver. It sounds like the language that he used when he transferred was certain things happened at Georgetown that made it certain that he couldn't be there, whatever that means. And whenever people have talked about it, it's been very kind of hush-hush, like, Patrick Ewing is going to make sure he gets that waiver so that things don't come out. I don't know what that means. But regardless, it sounds like he's going to get his waiver to play. The language seems similar to when Justin Fields transferred out of Georgia for some issue at the school. So if that happens, look, Mac McClung at Texas Tech is going to be dynamic, and they need a guard. Yeah. After losing Davide Moretti, losing Jamias Ramsey. And look, if they get Jonathan Kuminga, that would be huge. I don't think they will, because I don't know if he's going to play college basketball. But if he does, then Texas Tech, then I would say this is a huge deal. And then Texas Tech is now a top 5-10 team in the country. Because Chris Beard is one of the 5 best coaches, I think, in college basketball. So I think this is a little deal right now. If Kuminga commits, it could be a big deal.
I agree with you. I'll go little deal pending on what parties return or come or rather sign on. McClung's a very good player. I think that if he comes back, he's one of the star players in college basketball. We know what Chris Beard's able to do. We said, I think, from the beginning that Texas Tech felt like the perfect fit for him and his game and how they play. So it's a little deal with the potential of being a big deal, depending on how they fill out the roster. But as we know with Chris Beard, as he's shown pretty much his entire career as a coach, he doesn't need a lot. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't need a lot to compete at an elite level.
Last year they weren't the best team in college basketball, but they could compete with any team in the country with not a whole lot of talent. Like Jared Culver was gone, and they didn't really replace him. I mean, Jamias Ramsey was very good, but still not Jared Culver.
Yeah.
And they lost 3 games, and they were still a competitive basketball team. Now, if you've already bring in Damari Burnett, who's a 4-star, 5-star kid, bringing now Mac McClung, to those guys in the backcourt, and if you get Kuminga, I think we're talking about a top 10 team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a lot of shooting. Losing Moretti is going to hurt them in that regard, but yeah, this could be something with McClung headed to Texas Tech. Another guard who withdrew from the draft only to enter the transfer portal is former Florida guard Andrew Nembhard. According to ESPN right now, I know we got some of the teams that have reached out to him, including Gonzaga, Duke, Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Memphis, and Georgetown, who obviously now needs a guard after the departure of McClung. Where do you see Nembhard fitting best so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because 3 of those teams that you mentioned kind of got screwed over in the last month, with Daisha Nix at UCLA leaving, Jalen Green not going to Memphis, and you mentioned Mac McClung obviously not going to Georgetown. So those are 3 teams right now trying to kind of scramble and kind of salvage whatever they can. And we don't know right now whether or not Nembhard is a play right away transfer. That's probably a big deal, but as of right now, he's good enough to where a team will take him now or next year. But no, when it comes to Nembhard, I would say the teams that you have to look at are certainly Duke, because of the R.J. Barrett connection, him having been teammates with R.J. Barrett, both internationally and in high school at Montverde. Gonzaga has obviously a history with Canadian point guards and international players in general. And Oregon, another school that has had a lot of success with Canadian players. I think Memphis will certainly try, and whenever Memphis tries to get into a conversation with a player, especially a point guard, they'll have a chance, just like they did with Mac McClung. But when it comes to what team I think will get Andrew Nembhard, my early guess right now is Oregon. I think because of the Canadian connection, you're losing Peyton Pritchard. He could step in right away and be arguably the team's best player. We're talking about a guy that could be playing in the NBA right now. He probably would have been a second-round pick and, played in the FIBA World Cup, against Team USA and other, senior national teams, and played with the Canadian senior national teams. We're talking about a very seasoned point guard. Not a guy that's going to average 25 points, but a guy that's going to really quarterback your team as well as any other point guard in the country.
I could see Oregon for sure. To me, he feels like a Dookie. He has the very close relationship with R.J. Barrett, Mike Krzyzewski, now starting to tap into the Canadian recruiting pool as well. I know they have, obviously, Roach coming in. They have Gold Link on the roster. Gold Link is a rapper. Gold Wire on the roster. I don't think that's going to deter Mike Krzyzewski from picking up a player like Nembhard. We've seen what he's done in the past with signing multiple players who play the same position and getting there and just telling them to figure it out. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that at this point at this stage of his career, I think he's just trying to put the best talent pool together to compete at the highest level. And I think Nembhard comes in and he's a difference maker.
Are you subtweeting about Marvin Bagley?
I tell you what, I mean, the Bagley Carter situation is the immediate situation that comes to mind. If you ask me, yes, that situation immediately comes to mind. If you guys don't know, obviously Wendell Carter had already signed to Duke, and he was assuming that he'd be the big man on campus. He was supposed to be the best player on the team, and then they signed Bagley, who reclassifies. And afterwards, his family was kind of talking about, we were lied to, and they kind of made these allusions, not speaking to exactly what they were talking about, but we knew that's what they were talking about. So, I'm sure you can make the same case for what happened with Reddish, Zion, and Barrett. I guarantee you, Coach K didn't tell all of them, hey, we're gonna get Zion too, because at the time, a lot of people thought they all kind of played the same position. So K doesn't care about that. I think K feels like his leadership skills, his quality as a coach, he can smooth over whatever beef may come from whatever he may have told a recruit on the recruiting trail that becomes very different once we get to the fall and they're practicing with another elite player at their position. So I can see Nembhard certainly being there. As you guys know, I wore a Gonzaga fan shirt on the last podcast, so you guys know I'm a Gonzaga fan. Obviously, I'd love to see Nembhard at Gonzaga. The question with Jalen Suggs makes things interesting. By all accounts, we assume Jalen Suggs will be in Spokane in the fall, but it still seems to be kind of like a cloud hanging over whether or not this is actually going to go through. So Nembhard could provide some security if that doesn't go through. I also feel like because Suggs' size, I think that you could put both of them in the backcourt.
Yeah,
now if you got Nembhard and Suggs in the backcourt, you got the best backcourt in the country coming in next year. So
yeah,
and that's of course assuming that Nembhard's allowed to play next year. If he's not allowed to play, as I say as a Gonzaga fan, I look at Gonzaga as a place where you can, sit out 1 year and then come back a beast. I don't know how many guys we've seen either redshirt or go into a transfer year and then not play and then come back and they're NBA players. So, I mean, to me, if you're a transfer, Gonzaga should always be in your final list because everybody who makes that transfer move ends up much better for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for Gonzaga fans, you definitely think about Nigel Williams-Goss when he comes to Nembhard. Similar kind of player, similar kind of stage of their career, when they made this move. And so I think that's a selling point. And I think Williams-Goss, or rather Nembhard, would be a very good fit for Gonzaga. You also then wonder what happens with Joel Ayayi. Does he now have to stay in the draft? Does he transfer? Does he now just come off the bench? He's the guy that kind of emerged last year.
Yeah.
But Gonzaga's an interesting team because, obviously you mentioned you're a Gonzaga fan, but, they're a team that right now, if everyone comes back, including Corey Kispert and Philip Petrusev as well as Ayayi, they could be the preseason number one team in the country. I'd argue they probably should be.
Yeah, I'd argue they should be.
But there's a massive there's a range where, in a darkest timeline, if you lose any one of Suggs, Petrusev, Kispert, or all of those guys, that now you're ranked you're a middle of the road kind of top 25 team that'll still beat up on the West Coast Conference, but maybe not a national championship contender. So that's.
But we say that about Gonzaga, but that was supposed to be what Gonzaga was this past season. I mean, at a certain point, we gotta start to. I mean, I don't want to toot the Gonzaga horn here as a fan, but at some point we gotta start to assume Gonzaga to be kind of like Duke, where no matter who's on the team, they're going to be in the top 5. Because they've had a couple of years that's supposed to be transition years recently, and they end up winning 30 games and securing a top 1 or 2 seed.
And the thing about that is because Gonzaga doesn't play in I hate to hit on the whole thing of they don't play in a tough conference, but when you're not in a Power 5, like Gonzaga, they're going to win the West Coast Conference every year. I'm not going to argue that, and they're going to probably dominate it every year. You got a guy like Drew Timme, like he's way better than anyone else in the West Coast Conference outside of maybe BYU and St. Mary's. Anton Watson's coming back. He's also going to dominate the West Coast Conference probably. Right. So they're going to have pieces. But if we're talking competing at that national level with the Dukes and the Kentuckys, you're going to need horses like Jalen Green, Philip Petrusev, Corey Kispert, guys who have been there or guys who are going to be top 5, top 10 picks.
I'm just saying, last year people were saying in order to compete in the conference, you were going to need the Rui Hachimuras and the Brandon Clarks to compete at the elite level. And guess what? They are still number 1 in the country.
Look, maybe it's the recruits. Maybe, Dominic Harrison, Julian Strather. These dudes are also top 60, 70 recruits. So, maybe those guys are better than we expect. But, I mean, you got to give Few his credit after, at some point. I think Gonzaga's always going to be competitive. If we're talking national championship, I don't know. I'm saying.
Look, they haven't won one yet. So in fairness, they haven't won one yet. So they got to do it. But I'm talking about being a contender. And again, if you're talking about being a contender, recent history has shown it doesn't. Recent history show doesn't seem to matter who's on the roster. Like it's starting to become a situation where the system kind of runs itself, and they got the talent now coming in every year to compete on that level, combined with Few's coaching ability. So shout out to the Gonzaga crew. Shout out to Mark Few and all the work he's done over there. The last recruit or transfer rather we should discuss though is the leader of the Jelly fam. Is back in the portal. Isaiah Washington, Iona guard, announced he is leaving the school after just one season. He previously transferred from Minnesota after falling out in favor with coach Richard Pitino. The timing of this new coaching hire with Rick Pitino meant that he had to get out of there as well. He said, peace, I ain't playing for this guy. Especially Pitino actually had some quotes where he was slamming Isaiah Washington while he was at Minnesota. So this we knew this was probably going to be the end once Rick got the job over at Iona. What do you make of his second transfer? I mean, this kid is kind of became like an internet phenomenon, and he played well last year at Iona. He had a good season, but obviously they didn't make a lot of noise. Would they have made the tournament? I don't remember what happened in the MAC. Did they win the MAC tournament? Did they even have the MAC tournament?
I don't think the MAC tournament
they didn't play it out, right?
Finished. Yeah.
Yeah, Hofstra won the CAA or whatever they were playing in.
Yeah.
Okay, because I knew one of the New York teams when I couldn't remember. So we don't know how Iona season would have ended, but now Jelly fans back in the portal. I mean, is there anywhere you want to see him go? What do you make of this second transfer for this kid?
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah Washington, we talk about Jelly fan, he's a New York City legend, when it comes to high school basketball, when it comes to, street ball, overall just the culture in New York of the last 5 to 10 years. There hasn't really been many figures like Isaiah Washington, in sports at the youth level, even in like hip hop, you talk about like, A Boogie, and maybe a couple other people, Lil TJ, and then, Isaiah Washington's going to be in that conversation. But, he hasn't had the college career that people expected, at least people in New York expected. And he was never a 5-star point guard. So I think if you ask a college basketball coach or you ask a recruiting analyst, I don't think they would tell you they're shocked that Isaiah Washington kind of struggled at the next level. But I think he's got to go. I think he's got to come. I don't want to say he's got to come home because he went to Iona, but he's got to play, I think, at a level that fits him. I know Long Beach State reached out. Maybe some people feel he may need to get away, from the New York area. Minnesota didn't really do him many favors. Honestly, I think if he would have stuck it out in Minnesota, I think things could have gotten better. I think he was good enough to play at that level. I just think he wasn't. Not everyone's a one and done. I think that's what some guys have to realize. But no, I think look, there are certainly spots. I think St. John's is a place that he could certainly go to. I think he's going to play at the Power 5 level though. I think that's my point. I think he can play at the Power 5 level. I think he's going to give you a veteran guard that can score, get to the basket. Hofstra would also be a good fit considering the success they've had with local players recently.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're another school that I would look at if I were Isaiah Washington.
Yeah, I like the Hofstra comparison because they've done a great job with a lot of New York City guards, New York City players in recent years, guys that have become stars at Hofstra, and we see that program is definitely on the way up. So I like the Hofstra comparison. I agree. I think he needs to go to a place that obviously values downhill guard play. I'm not saying this is a place where he needs to go because I don't think they would be interested, but a place like Villanova, makes sense. Places that kind of run their programs in a similar way.
You mean tell me the school that ran off Javon Quinterly wouldn't be interested in Isaiah Washington?
Oh yeah, they're not gonna want him. And you would think Quinterly would have worked out better than it did, but I think that's the kind of places where teams that will utilize multiple guards, teams that will kind of value dribble penetration. A team that I think might make sense for him. It's not in the New York area, but I think considering the way they play and the way they've played recently, a place like Illinois might be a good spot for him.
Antigua.
Yeah.
you would be interested in that. But
exactly.
yeah,
You got the Antigua connection. They also value New York City guards. They value downhill guard play. I don't know if they'd be interested, but I think they're coming off a year where they had a really strong year and they weren't able to capitalize in tournament play, which was unfortunate for all these teams. For a team that's trying to maybe stay relevant and kind of stay afloat and keep the kind of talent that they have, maybe Isaiah could be a shot in the arm someplace like that.
Yeah, Illinois, they're actually bringing in a New York City point guard, Andre Curbelo from Long Island Lutheran. So, certainly, now for him, he'd have to decide, look, if I'm sitting out, do I want to, be behind the eight ball when it comes to the point guard position?
That's true.
Would have started with freshmen. Or, if you feel like I'll play with that guy. He probably knows Curbelo, probably friends with him. But, no, I think, Alabama's another team, though, with Javon Quigley now there. Honestly, I think it would be very fun to see those guys playing together, potentially. And sometimes you need to play with guys that you're comfortable with, sometimes guys play better in that environment. Like, Quinterly, Villanova never really fit him. I think he thought it did, but honestly, that's not where he was going to go in the first place. So.
Yeah, it's like I think I talked about it in the last podcast. Like Quinterly kind of fits exactly the kind of like parody of a player that Jay Wright says that he realized that he doesn't need. You know what I'm saying? So, stylistically, you would think it would fit, but I think the Villanova players that go there are typically kind of the unheralded, kind of blue collar kind of guys.
From a cultural perspective, not the best.
Yeah, exactly. Cultural perspective, not the best fit. So, and that's why I'm just saying I wouldn't say Isaiah should go to Villanova or that they would want him, but in style of play, I think that's the kind of team that
also
because he's undersized and he really kind of only from a traditional standpoint only plays one position, but he's also a guy who kind of looks to score. You need to find a team that could allow him to get a lot of minutes, despite the fact that maybe he's only 6'1", that you can put him with another guard who is okay with him dominating the ball or things like that. You know what I'm saying?
The last school I would be intrigued about would be Murray State. If Murray State was interested and said you're going to be our point guard, if I was Isaiah Washington, I'd be intrigued by what McMahon was able to do with John Morant, in the Murray State lineage of point guards.
Yeah,
I give that a shot. It's a lower level. He should certainly be able, may not dominate, but he should certainly be able to produce. So that would be a place I would also look at.
And I think that he should still keep his head up because, like you said, not every freshman is going to be one and done superstar. Like his career, he still has plenty of time. To still, he's got 2 full seasons still to show what he's got. So I think, and that's why I think schools also shouldn't bail on him. I think that he's obviously a talented kid. I don't know what to make of character. I know that Rick had definitely kind of made allusions to his character. I haven't seen anything negative. Obviously he garners a lot of attention, but it seems to me he's handled it well. He definitely
what's the difference between him and really there's no difference as far as we know between him and Mac McClung, in terms of
right. They definitely like social media. They definitely use social media, but I think neither of them use it in a negative way or in a way that makes me feel like they don't care about the game.
And I think to an extent, Georgetown may have kind of limited Mac McClung's ability to really promote himself. Patrick Ewing's kind of from the mindset, the old school John Thompson mindset of players don't talk to the media, players don't do this, they don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't think McClung really liked that much,
right.
Because he's a guy obviously has been promoting himself since he was a junior in high school. So that was never the best fit. I don't know if you ever thought about that or if Ewing sold him something different than what he would ended up being. But now he's going to go to a school that I would imagine would allow him to do those types of things, and Isaiah Washington's going to have to find the same situation.
It's funny because with the McClung thing, and last thing before I move on, from a basketball program standpoint, probably wasn't a good fit. From a school standpoint, Georgetown was a perfect fit for Mac McClung.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mac McClungs are at Georgetown now that don't play basketball. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's what the school is. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of crazy how that worked out. So when you talk about why did he go there, that could have been a big reason why as well. Culturally, Georgetown definitely seems to be a good fit for him. It just maybe the basketball team didn't work out. 5-star recruit Moussa Sesay officially reclassifies into the 2020 class, meaning that he'll be eligible to be a freshman this upcoming season. We spoke about the 6'11" center on the last pod. He was expected to announce his decision almost immediately after the reclassifying, but then due to the unrest in the country, they said that they're going to delay that decision. Kentucky, Memphis, FSU, Georgia, LSU, and once again Georgetown, who Georgetown's come up a million times on this podcast today, are on his list. On the last podcast, Kendall, you said that if he reclassified, you thought it was likely a Memphis commitment. He, of course, plays high school ball in Memphis. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, very interesting. Yes, when I said that, there were very few crystal balls out from Moussa Cisse on 247 Sports, so it was kind of still up in the air. Since I've said that, pretty much every single one of them have gone to LSU. So a lot has changed behind the scenes apparently in that recruitment. There had been some word that LSU was certainly in the running the whole time, but I don't know if I ever bought it. I kind of always thought Florida State was more of a threat than LSU from a pedigree standpoint. Leonard Hamilton has more of a track record than Will Wade, but especially with big men. But look, Will Wade he's a convincing recruiter. And he's gotten 5 stars in the past. He put together a great recruiting class last year, put together another great one this year, despite all the potential scandal. Dick Vitale tweeted this week that they already got a notice of allegations from the NCAA. I don't know if that's true, because Jeff Goodman said that his source told him that never happened, but it will happen eventually.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Musa Sesay right now, the LSU stuff is definitely weird when you're talking about a guy. He never took a visit to LSU. Never
weird things happening at LSU. We never heard that before.
Yeah, I know, right? Shocking. But I mean, look, there is a pandemic that is preventing guys from taking visits, so I do take that in consideration. He may have taken a visit during this time period had it not happened. Maybe he was planning on taking a visit and he can't. Plenty of dudes. Mac McClung committed to Texas Tech without taking a visit, so it's not the craziest thing during this time. But I mean, he's already taken visits to Memphis and taking visits to Kentucky and Florida State, so you would think those schools would be out in front. At the end of the day, what he told Jonathan Givony, first of all, he told Jonathan Givony, who broke the news that he's reclassifying and committing soon, was that he told him that he's been working out with James Wiseman and Precious Achiuwa, and that gave him the confidence to know that he could play at the next level, and to know he could play the NBA very soon, potentially. He's been working out with Chris Brinkley, who also works out with Precious Achiuwa out in New York. And he also told Jonathan Givony he's looking for the place. The decision that he makes will be the school that gives him the best chance to make it to the NBA. So I think that's the key that I don't think people are picking up on. And to me, that just doesn't sound like LSU, personally. Unless he's just completely warped in his mindset that LSU gives him the best chance out of Kentucky, Memphis.
I mean, that sounds like Kentucky. That sounds like a Kentucky answer to me.
It could be a Kentucky.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen. I'm just saying if you're telling me making the NBA is the number one priority.
Yeah.
I mean, Naz Reid got drafted in the second round after being a first round kind of talent when he got to LSU.
Yeah, 5-star recruit. Yeah. Was he drafted? I don't know if he was drafted.
Oh yeah, man, he might have been undrafted.
He might have been undrafted.
Yeah,
he was a really late second round pick.
Yeah, so that didn't seem to work out that great, and Wade's hasn't been there that long, so I don't have this long line of centers or even NBA players, period, that I can point to and say, well, this is what Will Wade has produced. So now that doesn't mean he hasn't talked to Will Wade. I mean, obviously, he hasn't taken a visit, so it's not like he can go down there and say, oh man, these facilities are crazy. Like if I go here, I'm gonna make the NBA.
Yeah,
I don't. But I don't know. I mean, we talked to Cody Toppert on the YouTube channel. Shout out to him. He talked about how they're doing Skype visits and things like that. So maybe Will Wade is showing him something, and the coaches are showing him something that make him feel like, well, if I go down there, I'm gonna be a beast. Maybe, I don't know. But when you say NBA is my number one priority, to me, LSU would be no higher than 3 on this list. Kentucky and Memphis would be first, and I can make a case FSU would be third.
Yeah, and honestly, Georgetown, if they were still in the running,
considering they have an NBA longtime assistant coach, I mean LSU would not be on near high on my list if I'm talking about trying to make the NBA.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the crystal ball meets what Cisse is saying. Is Cisse trying to pull a fast one on everybody so that people don't get off the scent of LSU? Because people don't think of NBA prospects with LSU. But we don't know what these kids are thinking, because maybe Will Wade's telling him, yo, Shaq went here. And he's like, oh, well, that's the place I got to go because I want to be like Shaq. Like, I don't know.
You know what's funny? I was another kid, Jalen Worley, who's a borderline 5-star point guard in the 2021 class. He did an interview where he was talking about his top 10 schools, and one of them was LSU. He's a big 6'5" point guard. And when he explained why he was considering LSU, he said, look, LSU's had they've done great with big point guards like Ben Simmons, so I feel like I can go there and play great. And in my head, I'm reading this. I'm like, does this guy know that Will Wade didn't coach Ben Simmons?
Yeah,
so, like,
exactly.
The whole Ben Simmons thing is kind of irrelevant. But
yeah,
I mean, that's why he's interested in LSU, and great for him. Sometimes guys care about the whole pedigree thing, and it's great for the brand. Like, you go to Georgetown, you can be the next great Georgetown big. But like, at least Patrick Ewing played there under John Thompson, so there is some connection.
And he's coached in the NBA at a very high level.
He's a Hall of Fame center.
Yeah, and a Hall of Fame player, exactly.
Like, I'm not gonna go to, I don't know, Oregon and say, yeah, I'm gonna be the next Marcus Mariota. Like, that Chip Kelly's not there anymore.
They had everybody that was involved in Marcus Mariota's development is not at the program anymore.
Different school.
Yeah. Exactly.
Besides Nike, it's a completely different Oregon, it's a completely different LSU. So, but some kids don't realize that. I remember Karan Iverson. Memphis was a school that we contributed or we benefited from Derrick Rose and John Calipari. Particularly Derrick Rose, what he built in the NBA post his career at Memphis, while Josh Pastner was the coach. And Pastner was only there for 1 year with Calipari. Right. He didn't coach Derrick Rose. But guys would go there because, D. Rose went here. So if D. Rose went here and blew up, then I can go here and blow up. So I get that. Same with John Morant. But, like, if you go to Murray State, you're at least being coached by the guy that coached John Morant. So to me, it's an odd way of thinking. But the last thing I'll say about Cisse is that my theory on what's happening here is I wonder if on both sides between LSU and Memphis, he's going to pick one of those two schools, I think. Kentucky, there is an outside chance that they pull a fast one on this one and they steal him. But my gut tells me he's still going to go to Memphis, but that there's a lot of smoke surrounding LSU in order to make the recruitment seem more legitimate. Because we saw what happened with Wiseman, and even with Wiseman, there was a lot of smoke. Oh, he's going to Kentucky, like he's not going to Memphis. And then eventually he committed to Memphis. It was kind of like, well, duh, of course he committed to Memphis. In order to make it seem like it wasn't a foregone conclusion, Wiseman said, yeah, the whole time I was going to Memphis. So, and we end up seeing what happened with Wiseman, obviously, eventually, why he kind of went to Memphis. But when it comes to Musa Sesay, I don't think this guy transferring to a school in Memphis was for no reason. And but you can't do the same thing like you did with Wiseman. You can't have him just say, "Yeah, I'm transferring to school in Memphis," and then I'm in the bag for Memphis for for the whole year, and then I just go there. There has to be a little bit of drama to make people kind of really went back and forth. Maybe it didn't go back and forth behind the scenes, but you kind of have to make it look that way. So I think that's a possibility, but that could just be too. Maybe he really is considering LSU. They are a power program when it comes to recruiting, so this should be interesting to follow.
It should be. Yeah, we will for sure. Staying on Memphis a little bit, and the last story for today is a move that has been anticipated for months. The former NBA champion and the Memphis Tigers assistant coach Mike Miller has resigned. He put out a statement saying, quote, "The past 2 years have been amazing, and I have so many people to thank. Coach Hardaway for believing in me, all of the players for their commitment, the University of Memphis and its incredible fans, my wonderful wife and kids, and the entire city of Memphis for everything you have done for me and my family." He says he's leaving to, quote, focus on his family. Mike Miller has been a beast on the recruiting trail. He is credited for bringing a lot of the top-tier talent that Memphis has snatched up in recent years. Kendall, you of course have your ear to the ground with everything going on with the Memphis Tigers. What is going on here? What are you hearing as to why this has happened? Because Penny and Mike kind of were a dream team duo on the recruiting trail. Yeah. And it was as early as mid-season pretty much, or even early season of this past season, we were hearing Mike's probably getting out of there soon. So what happened? We have the charter jet Instagram post from Penny with Mike, talking about we out here grinding. They were like LeBron and D Wade in Miami, and now it's over. It's done. Just 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. First of all, I think it's funny because Chris Vernon, who host of the Ringer NBA show, and he's a Memphis. He used to be a Memphis radio host. Still, I think he's a Memphis radio host. But he was talking about this, and he said he was like, one of the things that he finds funny about Mike Miller's statement about having to want to spend more time with his family is that he spent the last 3-4 months with his family during this health crisis. Yeah. So it's like he was like, the last thing I want to do is spend more time with my family at this point. But so I think some of that's like, all right, that's cap. But look, maybe it's opened his eyes to be like, oh, maybe I don't want to just spend my time recruiting guys and coaching. Maybe I just want to chill. But I don't know. When it comes to Mike Miller, like you said, there's been a lot of smoke around, what was going to happen with Mike Miller all season, and I think he wanted to stay. That's my gut, is that the plan was for him to coach this season and then be out and then bounce. And that plan got blown up when they didn't get Jalen Green and Greg Brown. And those were Mike Miller's recruits. Those are two guys he was heavily in on. I think if Jalen Green would have went to Memphis, I think Greg Brown probably would have went to Memphis. It's not a guarantee, but especially if Shaka Smart would have been fired, that would have certainly happened. And if that happens now, why would Mike Miller leave? Now you're setting yourself up for a team that could be a top 5 team in the country, coaching 2 top 5, top 10 picks, and now that's on your resume. So it'd be stupid to leave at that point. So I think that was the plan. But once they didn't get those guys, it became kind of I don't want to say a waste of time, because I think Mike Miller still adds something to the team from a coaching standpoint, because he's a great player in the NBA for many years. So I get that, that value, but from a recruiting standpoint, he missed out on the two guys he prioritized in this class. Really, the only two guys the school prioritized. So really, what's the point in being there for him or for Penny if Mike's not going to be there long term? Right. I don't. Mike Miller ever plan on being there for 5, 6, 7 years. I think they wanted to get Jalen Green and Greg Brown and coach those guys, and then we'll see what happens after that. But once that didn't happen, I think there was a mutual decision, is what I'll say. I think this was a parting of ways where I think not that Penny wanted Mike Miller to leave. Like he was a negative factor, but that once it became clear Mike Miller wasn't going to be there long term, it wasn't in their best interest from a recruiting standpoint to have an assistant who's a lame duck. When he's not going to be out there recruiting Chet Holmgren, knowing that he's not going to be there.
Right.
Like, so that is kind of that was the awkward position that they were in. So I think they figured, as opposed to pretty much tying our hands behind our back from a recruiting standpoint going forward, at least for the next year, let's get out in front of this. If Mike Miller has anything else he wants to do, there's been rumors about the Detroit Pistons potentially being a spot. They have a GM opening, an assistant GM opening, and Arn Tellem, who runs the Pistons right now, was his agent. So that could be a spot for him if that's where he wants to go. Although there's plenty of candidates for that. But no, I mean, I don't think this will hurt Memphis as much as a lot of people think, because from a recruiting standpoint, Mike Miller, as important as he was, and as great as he was as a recruiter, I know they didn't get Garrett Brown and Jalen Green, but to even be as close as they were to getting those guys at Memphis is a testament to how good a recruiter Mike Miller is. And he was the guy that got them Lester Quinones, got them Precious Achiuwa, and got them Boogie Ellis. So, it can't be overrated how good of a recruiter Mike Miller is. But I think they can find another guy that can, if Penny wants to find another NBA guy, he can do that. I think there are plenty of guys that will sign up to be the next Mike Miller. I don't know who that is. I've heard Nick Van Exel's name being thrown out there since he was last an assistant with the Grizzlies under Bickerstaff. But I think it's a place that is an attractive spot right now if you want to be an assistant coach in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree that Memphis still could remain a attractive spot. I think Penny, I think his name isn't as hot as it was, in that first year going into year 2. But still, I think his name resonates with AAU coaches, resonates with AAU high school players. It still holds a lot of weight. So while Mike did an amazing job doing a lot of the groundwork, I think that Penny's name will still get him in the door for a lot of kids that Memphis hadn't normally been in the door with. Now, when Coach Miller says, it's time for me to spend more time with my family, I mean, come on, fam.
That's a lie.
I mean, I had to play the Spike Lee "It's a Lie" joint from his interview on First Take. I mean, fam, more time with your family. That is complete and utter cap. That is like the basic. That is like how to explain I'm quitting or got fired 101 excuse. Like, in a time, like as you said, during a pandemic, all you've been doing is being at the crib, and you're trying to tell me that I found out I need to spend more time at the crib and not be working. That doesn't make any sense. I think your assessment of it is probably close to what has happened. My assessment of it is basically, I do think they both kind of realized, Penny and Mike, that he wasn't trying to be there long term. This is probably going to be, I think he probably planned on being there for like 3 years, most 3 or 4 years. 4 years definitely at the high point. And Mike was hoping this would propel him to some other gig. I think Mike started to hear the rumblings of these other gigs possibly being interested in him. And I think he looked back at it and said, we're kind of in this no man's land because of the pandemic. Maybe it's best for me not to be committed to being at another job at this moment in time, so that if, while these first few jobs open up I didn't get, maybe something that comes up later on after all this is over, especially with the NBA season, kind of the off season now being in like the fall and winter as opposed to being in the summer, maybe it's best if I just chill and then wait to see what happens there. And I think Penny probably decided that it didn't make sense for him to have a guy at this point in time who everyone knows has one foot out the door continuing on the staff. I don't think that's, and I don't think it would have been the best for them. I mean, would it have got them in the door with some kids for this upcoming season? I mean, probably, but as soon as Mike leaves, I think that then they're behind the eight ball. I think Mike realized that he wasn't trying to even be there for 3 or 4 years. I think he kind of realized, I'm trying to get out of here now. Because I think they all realize, man, college. I think these NBA guys don't understand how hard it is to be a college coach, whether it be an assistant or a head coach. In some ways, it's a give and take. Because in some ways, it's easier because you have total autonomy. You make more than the kids by a gross margin, so you have all the power.
Job security is great.
Job security is fantastic. So there are some benefits, but the grind. It's a 12-month thing. Like the NBA, these coaches they scout, they watch tape on the off season, but they get us off season. You know what I'm saying? There is no off season for college basketball coaches.
When it came to Memphis, from every recruit you heard, they would say, "Yeah, Mike Miller FaceTimes me every day," or Mike Miller
exactly
every day. That means Mike Miller is FaceTiming at least 5, 6, 7 guys every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine you had to FaceTime 7 other dudes just trying to convince them to come on to our podcast every day.
I barely like FaceTiming the people that I love in my life. I don't like FaceTime that much. So imagine, my girlfriend didn't like that. But I'm saying, I'm not a FaceTime person, period. So imagine if you're talking about FaceTiming 6, 7 times a day when you're a 40-year-old man, you're talking to 15-year-olds. It can't be the most fun thing in the world. I'm sure he loves the competitiveness. I'm sure he loves wanting to be the best at his job because Mike, was an elite athlete and he wants to win. But that's just like you don't like, getting up at 5 a.m. to run and to lift weights and then to, go to the gym and shoot for 5 hours. Guys don't like that thing. They love being basketball players. They love the competitiveness that goes with it. Yeah. I'm sure he loves being a coach. He loves trying to win games, trying to build a program. Does he love the aspects of it, the individual aspects, having to fly across the country, seeing these kids, having to go to AU tournaments, watch games from sun up to sun down? No. I don't know if any of these guys like that. It's part of the job. So
think about that grind, and then the last thing that I think pushed him out of college basketball is think about all of that grind that he put in to this class this year and the class last year, and what did it amount to for Memphis? It amounted to James Wiseman, the NCAA deciding on a whim, we're gonna cancel your season basically. Now, I mean for coronavirus. I mean because of a U-Haul that Penny Hardaway gave James Wiseman in high school.
Yeah,
decided to basically blow up Memphis' season, and because of that, probably, and because of the NCAA's own stupidity, pushed away Jalen Green, another guy he's recruiting.
Right.
That he thought that he had in the bag.
And that's another thing. That's another thing you don't gotta deal with in the NBA. You don't have this governing body that can just come in and just wave their finger at you and say, "Hey, fam, the way you're doing it is wrong. Now you're not allowed to do this, or this guy is suspended." The NBA can't do that.
And it's unfortunate, but when you hear stuff about he's gonna go to Detroit Pistons potentially, or he's trying to get back in the NBA, I think that's clear that I think the NCAA stuff did not help. I think if James Wiseman was at Memphis and Memphis was a top 25 team, which is what I think they would have been. I don't know if they'd have been a top 10 team, but if they were a top 25 team, and if Jalen Green commits, he's still at Memphis, and things are looking great, and maybe long term he's not there, but now his stock is way risen, and he probably loves the job because he's like, man, I get to coach these great players and I get to win, and I'm sure he had plenty of fun coaching Precious Achiuwa and Book Ellis and all the other top guys that they got, but he thought he was going to sign up to coach a bunch of one and dones, and he put in the work. It's not like he signed up and then thought
he put in the work. Nobody can deny Mike Miller wasn't trying his damnedest.
Basically won. He got James Wiseman. He convinced Jalen Green to come to Memphis, but other factors came in and that muddied the waters for him. So he's like, I can't control this. I can put in as much work as possible, and quote unquote the man will still bring me down. So that is, and so from that perspective, I totally understand it. One guy I would reach out to if I was Penny Hardaway, I don't think this guy really wants to get into coaching right now. It seems to be more on the TV track. But one guy I would reach out to is Vince Carter, newly retired Vince Carter. Them would be, look, come in. You're a Memphis Grizzly, so you know the city. You come in, be my Mike Miller. If you want to get into coaching, like the recruiting won't be that hard for Vince Carter, because he's Vince Carter. You know? He's a household name. He's a legend. He's played with a million NBA players. He's got the respect of every player in the league. And my other pitch would be, look, I know you want to get in this TV thing, but come here for 2-3 years. If we start winning games, like I think we will, once we get past all the NCAA stuff, you could be the next coach of North Carolina. Because Jerry Stackhouse right now seems to be the guy in pole position. Him and Hubert Davis, who's an assistant in North Carolina, for when Roy Williams leaves, whenever that is. But I don't think North Carolina, just like Duke, I don't think North Carolina really loves any of the in-house options that they have.
Right.
And so Jerry Stackhouse, that's the best thing they could do. I mean, look, the guy coached in the NBA as an assistant in the G League and, did a decent job at Vanderbilt in his first year. But I don't know if that Vanderbilt thing's ever going to get big enough to where they're going to be super excited about Jerry Stackhouse.
Yeah.
And he's not the biggest North Carolina basketball alum. But Vince Carter.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different game. He's like the elite of the elite when it comes to North Carolina.
When we talk about North Carolina basketball, that would excite people. Especially if he had been with Memphis and Penny Hardaway and they had been winning games and recruiting top guys. So,
I guess for me, I guess maybe I'm married to the Toronto Vince, the Nets Vince, and he's been a guy who's taken the back seat for the last decade plus, and it's kind of crazy how long it's been. But I still feel, I don't know if the first gig out of retirement he's trying to take a back seat again to anybody. And my pitch to Penny would be, you'll make a lot more money doing this than being on TV as a rookie on television. But at the same time,
it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I don't think Vince is not making that on his first year in television. He's making a lot. I don't think he's making $500,000. That's eventually
right, million.
Yeah, and then, if you're head coach, you're a millionaire. So at any major school. So I think I get that part. I get that part of it in terms of why I would recruit him. I just don't know if, again, a guy who's such a star player, he's a basketball icon. I think that's fair to say. I don't know if he's saying I'm taking a backseat to some other guy. Mike Miller had been a role player for all of his career. He'd always been the number 3 option, even at his best. So he always was a supplementary guy. So I think being a supplementary guy to a star, it was like he walked right into that role easily. Yeah, like Nick Van Exel, it makes more sense because Nick Van Exel has been that kind of guy, a very talented guy who always was kind of like second fiddle or third fiddle to some other guy. Whether it's Shaq, whether it's Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash and Michael Finley, like he knows that role, so he'll be comfortable. And he's been an assistant coach, so he also knows about not being the quote unquote man and running everything. But Vince coming from NBA, these guys, they don't like to go down that long road of. And it wouldn't. And you're right. Penny would pitch him that it wouldn't necessarily be this long road.
It'd be pretty easy. I think.
Yeah, it might be pretty easy if things work out the way you would lay it out.
People were talking about Mike Miller as a head coach at high D1 schools after 1 year, just because he was recruiting the guys he was recruiting.
Exactly.
He hadn't even gotten Jalen Green, and people were saying, "Yo, this guy Mike Miller is the best recruiter in college basketball."
And one last thing on Miller before we get out of here is we keep talking about him wanting to be, have some kind of role in the NBA. But had we considered that role is player? Because did you see the video of him flaming some dude on the Memphis roster? I don't know who that was.
Well, there were a couple of videos we had. The Kevin Davenport one, that was funny, yeah.
He was giving Kevin Davenport buckets at 40 years old.
Yeah.
And first of all, it honestly didn't surprise me, because I think people don't realize is how great NBA players are, and I say are, and I don't mean were with Mike Miller, because even when you're that old. A lot of times you don't retire because you can't play. It's just your body can't do the things it needs.
Especially in his case.
Yeah, and he dealt with a lot of injuries. On a night-to-night basis, that's necessary to play at that level. But these guys are so good that yes, even Mike Miller, after like 15 back surgeries and 10, 15 years in the league, can absolutely flame an 18-year-old D1 player in the prime of his life. Like, did you see that video? That video was nuts.
Yeah, him, Lester Quinones, he's going at Damian Ball. I mean, all these guys are catching the smoke from Mike Miller. You know, and
maybe he's talking about like lacing them up again.
Yeah,
we don't know for sure.
Spot in Disney World.
Yeah, he may say, "Yo, I got property in Florida. They know me. They know me in Orlando.
I'm very familiar with Orlando."
Exactly. Maybe he wants to pull up.
Do you have any guys in your mind that you think could be interesting transitions for Penny Hardaway that you should if we're talking NBA figures? That
NBA figures,
higher coaching, because it could be a former coach too. Remember, he had Sam Mitchell on the staff,
right?
Before, and that didn't
I thought about that as well.
With David Fisdale, he coached in Memphis, but I don't think he's trying to be an assistant for Penny Hardaway personally. But
yeah, Fisdale, he ain't. That's a pay cut for him. Yeah, he ain't doing that. The NBA coaches are hard. I think it would be more likely to be a guy who hasn't coached in a while, like Sam Mitchell hadn't coached in the NBA in a long time.
Right. Lionel Hollins.
Lionel Hollins ain't leaving Los Angeles to go back to Memphis. And I know he loves the city. And I don't want to diss. I'm not trying to diss Memphis at all. If there's anybody who would consider it, maybe be Lionel. But even he's not making that call.
Not even
the Lakers and everything they got. No, he's not leaving Los Angeles.
Yeah.
For Memphis. Yeah, it's hard for me to. I'm on the spot a little bit. It's hard for me to really think of one guy that comes out to that really comes to mind.
It's got to be a guy that has cachet, I think. I know Nick Van Exel played with Kobe, and that certainly will have a factor with recruits, but I just don't know if any 18-year-old kid is going to know who Nick Van Exel is, unless they play 2K. And even then, that's a deep cut.
You think Zach Randolph wants to coach?
Zach Randolph would be interesting. I
could see him taking that kind of role. He cares a lot about the youth. He cares a lot about the next generation. From everything I've heard from him.
Yeah,
and
I know he was helping Penny recruit James Wiseman.
Right. Yeah. So, and Memphis legend, absolutely. Yeah. First ballot Memphis Hall of Famer type guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a guy that kind of comes to mind in that role. I think a lot of people respect him. A lot of people know him. And I think as a recruit, I think he would be an unbelievable recruiter, in my opinion. Just his personality, the way he kind of knows what these kids are going through and kind of what the experience is and things like that, especially these young black kids. If I had to pick a guy, Zebo's the guy, the guy I'm stuck on right now, and say that maybe I give him a call.
Wow, yeah, that would also be fascinating. But yeah, no, I think look, if I'm a candidate for this job, I don't look at it that much worse than I did a couple of years ago. I know beyond the NCAA stuff certainly was not there before. It is there now, so you have to kind of monitor how that situation will go. But look, they got screwed over by the Wiseman thing, and I think had that not happened, we're talking about a program that ends up with a top 25 wins probably last season and a easy NCAA tournament berth, and then a team that now probably has Jalen Green, and is probably winning 20 games again. So they kind of got screwed over, but there's always going to be recruits considering them. They're already trying to get Chet Holmgren. They're trying to get Mikey Williams, trying to get, a lot of 5-star guys going forward. So it doesn't seem like Penny Hardaway is stopping his momentum or plans on changing up his strategy anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's going to be a good place to wrap the show this week, guys, or today. So thank you guys for listening to this edition of the Uncommitted, a recruiting podcast here on New Generation Media YouTube channel and on New Generation Podcast Network. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. You can also check us out on social media. You can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, and Action EJ on Instagram. You can find our channel on social media. We're at New Generation Pod on Twitter. We're New Generation Podcast on Instagram. And on Facebook, we're New Generation Media. And then if you like this video, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. And check out the rest of our stuff on YouTube. So for our YouTube watchers, I really appreciate you guys for sticking out with us for this episode 2 of The Uncommitted. Also, obviously, for our podcast listeners, thank you guys for listening in. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.